When we think of love, we often imagine bold proclamations, sweeping declarations under moonlight, poetic confessions whispered across candlelit tables. But in real life, in the lived experience of people navigating the complexities of affection and commitment, love often speaks in a much quieter tone. And one of the most telling signals of someone being deeply in love is this: they prioritize you in small, unseen ways. It doesn't show up with fireworks. It shows up in the details. When someone is in love, their mind naturally reorganizes itself around the presence of another person, not because they've been forced or persuaded, but because that's what real affection does. The late psychologist Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process of integrating another's experience into one's own while maintaining autonomy. That's what love compels us to do. And it's in this integration that prioritization becomes evident. It could be as simple as them texting back quickly, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely care about how your day is going. It's when they go out of their way to remember something you said weeks ago, some minor detail about your family, your work, or your favorite kind of tea. That memory becomes a priority, not because it's important on its own, but because you are. Now, this isn't about performance. Anyone can mimic acts of interest to gain approval. But love isn't a checklist. It's a natural, almost involuntary reordering of focus. Someone in love recalibrates their life in subtle ways. They reroute their schedule to make time for you. They sacrifice small comforts to ensure yours. These micro decisions might never be acknowledged or even noticed consciously, but they build the foundation of trust and intimacy. You'll notice that even when life gets busy, even when stress levels rise, they find time, not because they have it, but because make it. That's a profound distinction, because time ultimately is the most precious commodity, and how someone chooses to spend it reveals more than any sentence they could craft. There's a psychological truth here. Attention is the purest currency of love. Not money, not gifts, but attention. And when someone starts investing it in you consistently, quietly, without asking for recognition, they're telling you something, not with their words, but with the structure of their life. So here's what to reflect on. If someone's actions are whispering your importance into the routine rhythms of their day, listen carefully, because the loudest declarations of love are often the ones you'll never hear. They're the ones you'll feel. One of the most profound yet easily overlooked signs of deep love is a person's willingness to be vulnerable, emotionally open in ways that risk rejection, misunderstanding, or even loss of control. We tend to think of love as passion, confidence, strength, and yes, it can be those things. But in its truest form, love is also exposure. To love someone is, by necessity, to remove the armor. Vulnerability in the context of love is not weakness. It's not a lack of composure or self-discipline. It's actually an act of immense courage. It's the courage to say, "Here I am with all my doubts, fears, wounds, and dreams. Do you see me, and will you stay?" This doesn't happen with just anyone. It happens when someone feels safe enough to stop performing. That's where love begins to take root. Psychologically, vulnerability activates a deep neurochemical response. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, is released not during moments of perfection, but in moments of emotional sincerity. When someone shares their real thoughts, not their polished opinions, but their inner conflicts, that's not just talk. That's love trying to reach out from behind the walls we all build. That's a human being letting down their guard so that connection, not control, can guide the relationship. Now, you'll notice this in subtle ways. Maybe they confess fears they normally wouldn't voice. Maybe they talk about family pain, past betrayals, unfulfilled dreams. Not to gain sympathy, but because something in your presence makes them feel they no longer have to hide. That is sacred. It's love saying, "You matter enough to see the parts of me I don't show the world." We live in a culture that celebrates independence, stoicism, and emotional invincibility. But deep love asks us to do the opposite. It calls us to risk embarrassment, to share uncertainties, to show up with our full selves, not just the curated verse and we display on the surface. And this kind of openness is not immediate. It unfolds gradually, slowly, like the way a flower opens to sunlight. It doesn't force, it allows. So if someone is gradually revealing their inner world to you, consider it a gift. It means they are handing you something fragile, something rare. Here's the truth. The willingness to be emotionally vulnerable is not a side effect of love. It's the evidence of it. And if someone shows you that, don't ignore it. Recognize the courage in it, because real love doesn't speak in grand speeches. It whispers, "I trust you," in the quiet language of vulnerability. One of the clearest signs that someone is deeply in love and perhaps doesn't even realize it fully themselves is the consistency of their presence, especially during your most inconvenient moments. It's easy to show up when everything's going well, when you're at your best, when you're fun to be around, when life is light. But love, real love, isn't tested in the glow of highlight reels. It's proven in the shadows, when you're anxious, unwell, irritable, or uncertain. How someone behaves then reveals more about their feelings than any poetic declaration ever could. Now think about this. We all have a limited capacity for emotional energy. We're selective by necessity about where we give our time, attention, and support. So when someone chooses to be consistently present, not just for your triumphs, but for your low points, they're making a powerful, if unspoken, statement. You matter. I'm not just here for the fun. I'm here for the weight too. That's love in action. Presence in this sense isn't just physical proximity. It's emotional availability. It's the silent offer of, I'm not running when things get hard. That kind of loyalty is rare, not because people don't care, but because most are conditioned to seek comfort over connection. Love, however, reorders priorities. It replaces self-protection with self-giving. Philosophically, this presence is an echo of something greater, commitment without condition. It's not romantic idealism. It's a deeply grounded ethic. When someone shows up for you repeatedly with no guarantee of reward, with no performance to be impressed by, it's not because they're weak. It's because they've allowed their care for you to become more important than their own temporary comfort. That's not just noble, it's transformational. And here's the psychological piece. In relationships, consistency is safety. The nervous system calms in the para, a sense of reliability. Over time, that creates the space where intimacy can deepen. You can't build trust on intensity alone. You build it on repeated actions, on showing up again and again, especially when it would be easier not to. So if someone stands beside you, not just during celebration, but in crisis, in boredom, in your unedited moments, that's not nothing. That's everything. Don't overlook it just because it's quiet. Because in the end, the deepest love rarely arrives with fireworks. It arrives with a steady hand, a quiet, reliable presence that says, even when you're not easy to love, I'm not going anywhere. And that's when you know, without words, that it's real. There's a certain kind of attention that doesn't come from politeness or social habit. It comes from devotion. You can recognize it when someone remembers the smallest, seemingly insignificant details, how you like your coffee, the story you once told them in passing about your childhood, the way your voice changes when you're tired. These aren't facts stored in their mind for convenience. They are fragments of you that they've chosen quite deliberately to hold on to. Why? Because you matter to them, not in general, but specifically. This kind of attentive noticing is not just a behavioral trait, it's a profound indicator of emotional investment. When someone is in love, even silently, their mind becomes oriented toward the other person. Psychologically, we refer to this as selective attention. It's the brain's way of filtering what's relevant. And when you're in love, that filter becomes biased toward one person. You begin to notice things about them that others miss, and you remember those things, not because you tried, but because they struck something deep inside you. This isn't just sentimentality, it's neuroscience. Love reconfigures our neural pathways. It heightens emotional salience, meaning we register certain emotional stimuli more intensely. And when someone is in love, the emotional data points attached to the person they love light up more brightly in the brain. That's why they can recall that you don't like being interrupted mid-thought, or that you always need a moment of silence before a big meeting. That's why they intuitively sense when something's off, even when you haven't said a word. Now, here's what's important. Remembering the little things is not about being flawless or romantic in the stereotypical sense. It's about care expressed through sustained focus. It's an emotional posture that says, I see you, I value what you share, and I'm paying attention, because you're not just background noise in my life. You're a central character in my internal world. If you ever find someone who remembers the parts of you that even you sometimes forget, pay attention, because that level of memory isn't manufactured. It's born from the kind of presence and emotional engagement that only love can sustain. So here's the truth. Love doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes it simply remembers. And in a world full of distraction and divided attention, to be remembered deeply by another is one of the most profound affirmations of your worth. Let that remind you, real love is quiet, but it never forgets. There's something profoundly revealing in where a person places their time. Time, unlike money or possessions, is not something we can save up or retrieve once spent. It is the most finite resource we have. And when someone chooses to give it freely, consistently, and without expectation of return, it reveals an unspoken hierarchy of values. Love, real, committed, often unexpressed love, shows itself in this very currency, the willingness to invest time. Now, this isn't about grand gestures or scheduled outings, though those matter too, but more about how someone shows up. It's in the way they make space in their day for you, not just when it's convenient, but when it costs them something, a deadline, sleep, or comfort. Their presence isn't performative, it's sacrificial. And sacrifice, in its truest sense, is the clearest indicator of love. Not the kind of sacrifice that seeks praise or recognition, but the quiet kind that says, I'm here, even when I don't have to be. From a psychological standpoint, this points to what researchers often call investment behaviors. In long-term relationships, these behaviors show a willingness to endure short-term costs for long-term emotional security. It's evolutionary. Humans form attachments not just for survival, but for significance. And time investment reinforces attachment. It's a bonding agent. When someone gives you their time, especially consistently, they are signaling not just affection, but prioritization. It's easy to say, I love you. It's harder to say, I'll be there at 2 a.m. when you need to talk, and actually mean it and then do it. Love is tested not in easy hours, but in inconvenient ones. Those who love deeply don't just fit you into their schedule. They make you part of their schedule. You don't feel like a guest. They make you feel like home. Think about your own life. Who are the people who always seem to show up, not just physically, but emotionally? Who remembers when you have a hard week? Who calls not just to check in, but to understand? That pattern of presence is not casual. It is love without fanfare, loyalty without declaration. So here's what you must remember. In the end, people don't just give time to what they want. They give time to what they value. And if someone gives you their time over and over again, it's not accidental, it's intentional, it's love in one of its most silent but sacred forms. There's an almost mystical quality to how people protect what they love, not through loud declarations or overt defenses, but in subtle, consistent acts of safeguarding, physical, emotional, even reputational. When someone is truly in love, they don't just care for you, they shield you. sometimes from others, sometimes from the chaos of life, and often from yourself when you're too tired or broken to fight. This protection isn't rooted in control. It's not about dominance or ownership. It's about stewardship. To protect something is to recognize its value, its fragility, and its irreplaceability. And love, when it's real, makes us guardians. We start to see the other person's pain as our concern. Their struggles become something we can't ignore. We watch how the world treats them, and when necessary, we step between them and harm. Not with force necessarily, but with presence. Sometimes that's all it takes to protect someone, to simply be there. Psychologically, this is an extension of what attachment theory would define as a secure base. In healthy relationships, love becomes the safe harbor, something you can return to when the waves get high. People who love you silently but fiercely will defend your name when you're not in the room. They'll preserve your dignity when you've forgotten it. They'll help you hold the pieces when your hands are full or broken. But this kind of protection is also philosophical. It stems from a sense of moral obligation. Love, in its highest form, isn't a transaction. It's a responsibility. And responsibility means accepting that someone else's well-being is, in part, in your hands. That doesn't mean rescuing them from their own journey or controlling their choices. It means caring enough to help when help is asked, to support without smothering, to stand firm when everything else is falling. So when you see someone who consistently looks out for your best interest, not out of guilt, not out of codependency, but because your existence matters to them on a deep, often wordless level, that's not ordinary behavior. That's not casual. That's love speaking in the language of loyalty. And here's the challenge. Look for it and be it. Don't just wait for love to protect you. Learn to offer that kind of strength to those you care about. Because in a world that often feels indifferent or harsh, the quiet act of protection is one of the most powerful ways love can manifest. True love guards without asking for credit. It simply stands